I sat at the elegant mahogany table in downtown's most exclusive restaurant, surrounded by crystal glasses and pristine white linens, when my mother-in-law Patricia presented me with a beautifully wrapped gift box tied with golden ribbon. The entire Wellington family watched expectantly as I carefully unwrapped what I thought would be jewelry or perfume. Instead, divorce papers fell onto my plate with "From all of us" scrawled across the top in bold black letters. My husband Derek immediately pulled out his phone to record my reaction while Patricia smirked triumphantly. The bustling restaurant fell completely silent as other wealthy diners turned to stare at our table. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I read the cruel message, feeling the crushing weight of public humiliation, while my husband captured every moment of my devastation for their twisted entertainment. Looking back now, I should have seen this moment coming from the very beginning of my marriage to Derek Wellington. 3 years ago, I thought I was marrying the man of my dreams, a successful insurance adjuster from one of the city's oldest and most respected families. Derek was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in building a life together. What I didn't realize was that every aspect of our relationship would be controlled and manipulated by his domineering mother, Patricia Wellington. Patricia had built the Wellington family empire through Wellington Properties, a luxury real estate business that specialized in million-dollar estates and commercial developments. The company had been featured in prestigious business magazines, and Patricia herself was a regular at charity galas and country club events. She wore her wealth like armor, always dressed in designer suits and dripping with diamonds that caught the light whenever she moved her perfectly manicured hands. From our very first meeting, Patricia made it clear that I wasn't the type of woman she had envisioned for her precious son. She would make subtle comments about my background, my clothes, even the way I spoke. When Derek and I got engaged, she insisted on planning every detail of our wedding, choosing flowers I was allergic to, and a venue that made me feel uncomfortable. Derek always defended his mother's behavior, claiming it came from a place of love and family loyalty. After we married, the situation only got worse. Patricia expected me to quit my job as a marketing coordinator at a growing tech startup, insisting that a proper Wellington wife should focus entirely on supporting her husband's career and preparing to raise children. Against my better judgment, I gave up the work I loved and the independence it provided. Derek assured me this was temporary, that once we started our family, everything would make more sense. The pressure to have children became relentless. Patricia would make snide remarks about my bloodline and whether I was really suitable to carry on the Wellington legacy. She questioned everything from my eating habits to my exercise routine, always suggesting that perhaps I wasn't trying hard enough to conceive. Every family gathering became an interrogation about our progress, with Derek sitting silently while his mother dissected our private life. For months leading up to my 31st birthday, Derek and I had been arguing more frequently. He seemed distant and preoccupied, often staying late at the office or taking mysterious phone calls that he would end abruptly when I entered the room. When he suggested celebrating my birthday at Chez Laurent, the most expensive French restaurant in the city, I thought perhaps he was trying to make amends for our recent difficulties. I spent hours getting ready that evening, choosing a navy blue dress that Derek had once complimented and styling my hair in soft waves. I wanted to look perfect, hoping this dinner might be the turning point we desperately needed. When I arrived at the restaurant, the entire Wellington clan was already seated at a large round table in the center of the dining room where everyone could see us. Patricia was wearing a stunning red cocktail dress and a pearl necklace that probably cost more than most people's cars. She seemed unusually animated and cheerful, constantly whispering with Derek's sister Caroline and his father James. Derek appeared nervous, checking his watch repeatedly and fidgeting with his napkin. The atmosphere felt charged with anticipation, as if everyone was waiting for something significant to happen. Patricia insisted on ordering the most expensive champagne on the menu, claiming she wanted to toast a very special announcement. The way she emphasized those words should have been a warning, but I was too focused on trying to salvage my marriage to pay attention to the subtle signals. Caroline kept glancing at her phone and smirking, while James avoided making eye contact with me entirely. As the evening progressed, Patricia became increasingly theatrical, making grand gestures and speaking loud enough for nearby tables to hear every word. She talked about family traditions, about the importance of maintaining standards, and about how some people just aren't meant to be part of certain social circles. The other diners, many of whom I recognized from the society pages, began paying closer attention to our table. Then came the gift. Patricia made a great show of presenting the elegant box, talking about how much thought she had put into choosing something truly meaningful. As I unwrapped the divorce papers with trembling fingers, I could hear gasps from the surrounding tables. The papers were already partially filled out with Derek's signature clearly visible on multiple pages. My own name was misspelled throughout the document as if I wasn't even worth the effort of proper spelling. Derek held his phone steady, making sure to capture every moment of my shock and humiliation. I could see the cruel satisfaction in his eyes as he recorded what he clearly expected to be a complete breakdown. Patricia announced loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear that I had never belonged in their social circle anyway, that this was really for the best, and that the family had unanimously agreed this was the right decision. The weight of their cruelty hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of manipulation, 3 years of being made to feel inadequate, 3 years of sacrificing my own dreams and goals for people who had never respected me. But as I sat there with all eyes on me, something unexpected happened. Instead of crumbling under their attack, I felt a surge of clarity and determination. I looked up at Patricia with the calmest smile I could manage and said, "Thank you so much for this thoughtful gift. You've finally shown me exactly who you really are." I pulled out my own pen from my purse, signed the papers with a steady hand, and stood up gracefully. Derek's phone was still recording as I placed my napkin on the table and gathered my composure. "I'm actually grateful you've all made this so easy for me." I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. "By the way, Patricia, you might want to check your investment accounts first thing tomorrow morning. Sweet dreams." The entire Wellington family sat in stunned silence as I walked calmly toward the exit, leaving them wondering what I could possibly mean by that cryptic warning. The truth was, I had never been the helpless, naive woman Patricia believed me to be. For 3 long years, I had played the role of the submissive daughter-in-law while secretly documenting every cruel comment, every manipulative scheme, and every suspicious business transaction that crossed my path. What the Wellington family never knew was that my late father, Thomas Chen, had been one of the most brilliant financial analysts of his generation. My father had immigrated to the United States with nothing but his education and an unwavering work ethic. He built a quiet fortune through strategic tech investments in the early days of companies that later became household names. When he passed away during my final year of college, he left me an inheritance worth over $2 million, along with advanced degrees in both business and finance that I had earned on full academic scholarships. I had deliberately kept my financial background hidden throughout my relationship with Derek, having learned from previous experiences that money often attracted the wrong type of attention. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I could provide. Ironically, Patricia had convinced herself that I came from wealth and would boost their family's social status, which was part of why she had initially encouraged Derek to pursue me. 6 months before that humiliating birthday dinner, I had discovered the truth about Derek's character in the most devastating way possible. I found text messages on his phone revealing a passionate affair with Amanda Sullivan, his college girlfriend who worked as a high-end real estate agent. The messages were explicit romantic and made it clear this wasn't a recent development. Derek had been living a double life, telling Amanda that his marriage was a mistake and that he was planning to divorce me as soon as possible. Rather than confronting Derek immediately, I decided to gather evidence and understand the full scope of his betrayal. I hired Sarah Morgan, a former police detective turned private investigator who specialized in documenting infidelity and financial fraud. Sarah was a sharp professional woman in her 40s who had built an impeccable reputation for uncovering the truth in complex domestic situations. What Sarah discovered went far beyond simple adultery. Derek and Patricia had been planning my downfall for months, believing they could manipulate me into a divorce that would leave me with nothing while allowing them to claim half of assets they assumed I possessed. They had no idea that I had been carefully protecting my inheritance through trusts and offshore accounts that Derek couldn't access even as my legal spouse. The investigation also revealed something far more sinister about Patricia's business practices. Wellington Properties had been engaging in systematic money laundering through fake construction projects and inflated property valuations. Patricia was using her connections in local government to approve developments that existed only on paper, then funneling the profits through a network of shell companies and overseas accounts. Derek, despite his claims of ignorance, was deeply involved in the scheme. His position at the insurance company gave him access to property valuations and damage assessments that Patricia used to justify fraudulent claims. Together, they had been stealing money from investors' insurance companies and even federal housing programs designed to help low-income families achieve home ownership. As I pieced together the evidence, I realized that the Wellington family's entire lifestyle was built on criminal activity. The mansion, the country club memberships, the luxury cars, even the expensive restaurants where they conducted their business dealings. All of it was financed through illegal operations that had been going on for over a decade. 3 days before my birthday dinner, I had walked into the Federal Bureau of Investigation field office downtown and presented a complete dossier of evidence to Special Agent Maria Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez was a seasoned white-collar crime investigator who had been trying to build a case against Patricia for over a year. The evidence I provided was exactly what she needed to obtain search warrants and freeze the Wellington family's assets. I also began quietly liquidating Derek's access to any accounts that contained my money. Using my knowledge of financial systems, I transferred funds to secure accounts that he couldn't touch and removed his name from any investments or properties that I had foolishly included him on during our marriage. By the time of my birthday dinner, Derek had no legal claim to any of my actual wealth. The morning after the restaurant humiliation, Patricia discovered that all of her business accounts had been frozen by federal investigators. FBI agents arrived at Wellington Properties with a convoy of black SUVs and search warrants that allowed them to seize computers, files, and financial records dating back 15 years. Local news crews had somehow been tipped off about the raid and were broadcasting live footage of agents carrying boxes of evidence from the building. Derek's phone rang at 6:30 in the morning with Patricia screaming incoherently about federal agents and frozen accounts. He tried calling his family's attorney only to discover that their longtime legal counsel had already been contacted by prosecutors and advised to seek separate representation due to potential conflicts of interest. In a panic, Derek drove to my hotel suite at the Marriott downtown, where I was calmly enjoying room service breakfast while watching news coverage of his family's downfall on television. When he burst into the room using the key card, I hadn't thought to deactivate. He found me sitting in a silk robe, sipping coffee and reading financial newspapers as if nothing unusual had happened. "Mara, you have to fix this," he pleaded, his usual confidence completely shattered. "There's been some kind of mistake with the FBI. They think my mother is involved in money laundering or something crazy like that. You work in finance. You can explain to them that this is all just a misunderstanding." I looked up from my newspaper with the same calm expression I had worn in the restaurant. "Oh, Derek, there's no misunderstanding at all. I'm the one who provided the evidence to federal investigators. And yes, I've known about your affair with Amanda Sullivan for months. I have photographs, hotel receipts, and bank records showing exactly how you've been funding your little romance with our joint credit cards." The color drained from Derek's face as he realized the magnitude of what I had done. He had spent 3 years underestimating my intelligence and capabilities, convinced that I was nothing more than a naive woman who needed his family's guidance and protection. Now he was learning that I had been several steps ahead of him the entire time, carefully documenting his crimes while planning the perfect moment for my revenge. Derek stood in my hotel suite doorway, looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his hands shaking as the full reality of his situation began to sink in. I remained seated in the plush armchair, continuing to read my financial newspaper, while he processed the devastating news that I had orchestrated his entire family's downfall. "You don't understand, Mara," he stammered, running his fingers through his hair in a gesture I had once found endearing. "Amanda doesn't mean anything to me. It was just a stupid mistake, a moment of weakness. My mother pressured me into it, said I needed to explore my options before we had children. You have to believe me." I folded the newspaper carefully and set it aside, finally giving Derek my full attention. What I saw was a man who had spent his entire adult life having his problems solved by family money and connections, completely unprepared for consequences he couldn't buy or manipulate his way out of. It was almost pitiable if not for the years of emotional abuse he had put me through. "Derek, let me help you understand exactly how much I know about your relationship with Amanda," I said, reaching for a manila folder I had placed on the coffee table. "You rekindled your romance with her at your 10-year college reunion 8 months ago. The first hotel room you booked together was at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, charged to your business American Express card on March 15th. Derek's face went pale as I continued flipping through pages of documented evidence. "You've been meeting her every Tuesday evening at various luxury hotels, always using credit cards that pull from our joint accounts. You bought her a $3,000 tennis bracelet from Cartier on her birthday, told her it was an engagement gift, and promised you'd marry her as soon as you divorced the poor girl you had mistakenly married." The private investigator, Sarah Morgan, had done exceptional work gathering evidence of Derek's infidelity. She had photographs of him and Amanda entering hotel rooms, copies of receipts for expensive gifts and romantic dinners, and even recordings of conversations where Derek described his elaborate plans to leave me with nothing while starting fresh with his college sweetheart. "Amanda has been posting photos of your dates on her private social media accounts. I continued sharing them with friends and family while believing you were separated from your wife. She's been actively helping you hide assets in preparation for divorce proceedings, using her real estate connections to move money into properties I would never be able to trace. Derek slumped into the chair across from me, finally understanding that his carefully constructed web of lies was completely unraveling. "Amanda doesn't know about the business problems," he said weakly. "She thinks everything is legitimate. When she finds out about the federal investigation, she'll understand this isn't my fault." I couldn't help but smile at his naivety. "Derek, I'm afraid Amanda is about to learn some very uncomfortable truths about both you and your family. You see, while you were busy planning our divorce and your new life, I was busy documenting every illegal transaction you've been involved in over the past 3 years." The evidence folder contained bank records showing Derek had transferred $25,000 from our joint savings account to Amanda's personal checking account, claiming it was a business investment in her real estate career. In reality, Amanda had used the money to purchase luxury handbags and finance a European vacation she had taken with her girlfriends, posting photos on Instagram, while Derek told me he was working late at the office. I had also discovered that Derek had been approving fraudulent insurance claims to help finance Patricia's money laundering operations. His position at Mutual Trust Insurance gave him access to property damage assessments and claim processing systems that Patricia used to justify fake construction projects. Derek would approve inflated payouts for storm damage that had never occurred, then Patricia would use the money to purchase properties through shell companies she controlled. "Your insurance company received a complete report about your activities yesterday morning," I informed him, "along with documentation showing how you've been using company resources to conduct personal business and approve fraudulent claims. Your professional license will be suspended pending a criminal investigation, and Mutual Trust is already preparing to terminate your employment." Just as Derek was beginning to comprehend the full scope of his professional destruction, we heard a sharp knock at my hotel room door. Derek looked confused, but I knew exactly who it was. "That would be Amanda," I said, checking my watch. "I sent her a text from your phone asking her to come immediately. I thought she deserved to hear the truth directly from both of us." Derek's eyes widened in panic. "Mara, please don't do this. Amanda doesn't deserve to be hurt by our problems. She's innocent in all of this." I walked to the door and opened it to find Amanda Sullivan standing in the hallway, looking stunning in a designer dress and carrying a Louis Vuitton handbag that I now knew Derek had purchased with our joint credit card. She was a tall, elegant woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of privilege and social status. "Derek!" Amanda called out, stepping into the room and stopping short when she saw me. "Who is this woman? You said you needed to see me urgently about something important." "Amanda," I said with genuine warmth. "I'm Mara Wellington, Derek's wife. Please come in and have a seat. There are some things you need to know about the man you've been dating." Amanda's face went through a series of expressions from confusion to recognition to horror as she realized the implications of what I had just said. "Wife, but Derek told me you were divorced months ago. He said the papers were finalized and you had moved back to your hometown." "I'm afraid Derek has been lying to both of us," I replied, gesturing for her to sit down. "In fact, until yesterday evening, I had no idea you existed. But now I have documentation of your entire relationship, including the fact that Derek has been using our joint credit cards to finance your romance." I handed Amanda a folder containing copies of hotel receipts, credit card statements, and gift purchase records, all clearly showing Derek's name and our shared financial accounts. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the evidence of Derek's deception, her face growing paler with each page. "Derek, is this true?" she demanded, turning to face him with tears beginning to form in her eyes. Have you been married this entire time? Have you been lying to me for 8 months? Derek attempted to explain himself, claiming that our marriage had been over in everything but name, that he had been trying to find the right way to tell her the truth, that he loved her and wanted to spend his life with her. But Amanda wasn't listening to his excuses. She was reading the bank statements showing exactly how much money he had spent on their relationship while lying to his wife about working late. "There's more, Amanda," I said gently. "Derek's family is currently under federal investigation for money laundering and fraud. The FBI raided their business this morning, and Derek himself is facing criminal charges for insurance fraud. His professional license has been suspended, and he'll likely be unemployed within the week." Amanda stood up abruptly, her designer handbag falling to the floor as she processed this final revelation. She had believed she was dating a successful insurance executive from a wealthy, respectable family. Instead, she had been manipulated by a married man who was financing their relationship with stolen money while his family operated criminal enterprises. "You destroyed everything!" she screamed at Derek, her composure completely shattered. "My parents know about us. My friends have met you. My real estate brokerage thinks I'm dating a respectable businessman. Now everyone is going to find out that I've been having an affair with a married criminal." Amanda slapped Derek hard across the face, the sound echoing through the hotel room. "Don't ever contact me again," she said, gathering her belongings and moving toward the door. "I'm calling my attorney to make sure you can never claim I knew anything about your illegal activities." As Amanda stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, Derek realized he had lost everything he thought he wanted while destroying the only honest relationship he had ever had. He looked at me with desperation in his eyes, finally understanding that the quiet, submissive wife he had taken for granted was actually the strongest person he had ever met. The next 48 hours brought a cascade of devastating revelations that would completely destroy the Wellington family's carefully constructed facade of respectability. I remained in my downtown hotel suite, watching the drama unfold through news broadcasts and regular updates from FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, who had become my primary contact as the investigation expanded. Patricia's arrest was scheduled for Friday morning, but the FBI raid on Wellington properties had already exposed the scope of their criminal enterprise. Federal agents seized over 200 boxes of financial records, computer hard drives, and business documents that revealed a money laundering operation spanning more than 15 years. The evidence showed systematic fraud involving fake construction projects, inflated property valuations, and a complex network of shell companies designed to hide illegal profits. Local news stations had picked up the story, broadcasting live footage of FBI agents carrying evidence boxes from the Wellington Properties building, while Patricia stood in the parking lot screaming at reporters. Her usual composure had completely cracked under the pressure, and she looked nothing like the sophisticated businesswoman who had tormented me for 3 years. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, and her perfectly styled hair disheveled as she ranted about government overreach and family persecution. The financial impact was immediate and devastating. Bank accounts containing over $3 million in suspected illegal funds were frozen indefinitely, leaving the Wellington family unable to access money they needed for basic living expenses. The family's longtime accountant, attorney, and financial advisor all distanced themselves from the scandal, citing potential conflicts of interest and ethical concerns about representing clients under federal investigation. Derek's professional destruction was equally swift and thorough. Mutual Trust Insurance launched an internal investigation after receiving my evidence folder, quickly discovering that Derek had approved over 40 fraudulent claims, totaling more than $800,000 in the past 2 years alone. The company's board of directors voted unanimously to terminate his employment and referred the matter to state insurance regulators for criminal prosecution. Derek's professional license was suspended within 24 hours, effectively ending his career in the insurance industry. The state licensing board released a public statement describing his actions as a serious breach of professional ethics that undermined public trust in our regulatory system. Local business journals picked up the story, ensuring that Derek's reputation would be permanently damaged throughout the entire financial services community. Meanwhile, Amanda Sullivan was dealing with her own professional crisis. Her real estate brokerage, Pinnacle Properties, had received copies of all the evidence showing her involvement with Derek's financial crimes. While Amanda herself wasn't charged with any criminal activity, the brokerage's compliance department suspended her license pending a full investigation into whether she had knowingly participated in money laundering activities. Amanda's wealthy parents, prominent members of the city's social elite, were horrified to learn about their daughter's relationship with a married man whose family was under federal investigation. They immediately hired their own attorneys to protect Amanda from potential criminal charges and began distancing themselves from any association with the Wellington scandal. The social fallout was equally devastating for the Wellington family. Their country club membership was revoked after an emergency board meeting citing the club's moral character clause and the negative publicity surrounding the federal investigation. Longtime family friends began refusing their phone calls and declining invitations to social events, terrified that association with the Wellingtons might damage their own reputations. Derek had moved back into his parents' mansion after his hotel credit cards were frozen, but even that sanctuary was temporary. The federal government had filed asset forfeiture claims against all property purchased with proceeds from illegal activities, including the family's 8-bedroom estate, their vacation home in the Hamptons, and Derek's luxury sedan. 3 days after the restaurant incident, I received a call from Derek begging me to meet with him privately. His voice was barely recognizable, strained with desperation and exhaustion. He claimed he had something important to tell me, something that might help both of us navigate the legal challenges ahead. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a small cafe near my hotel, curious about what he might have to offer. Derek arrived looking haggard and defeated, wearing clothes I had never seen before that appeared to be borrowed from someone else. His usual confidence had been replaced by nervous energy and constantly darting eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping well. He seemed to have lost weight in just a few days, and his hands shook slightly as he tried to drink his coffee. "Mira, I know you hate me, and you have every right to—" he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I need you to understand that I never wanted things to go this far. My mother convinced me that you were hiding money from us, that you came from a wealthy family and were trying to take advantage of our generosity." I listened without interruption as Derek continued his confession, finally admitting the depths of his family's manipulation and criminal activity. Patricia had been running illegal operations since before Derek graduated from college, using her real estate business as a front for money laundering and fraud. Derek claimed he had initially been unaware of the extent of her crimes, but had gradually been drawn into the operation through small favors and minor violations that escalated over time. The affair with Amanda started as part of my mother's plan. Derek admitted unable to meet my eyes. Patricia said I needed to explore other options before we had children, that I should make sure I was making the right choice for the family's future. She arranged for Amanda and me to reconnect at the reunion, knowing that Amanda's family had the kind of wealth and social connections that would benefit our business. This revelation was particularly painful because it confirmed what I had suspected but hoped wasn't true. Derek's betrayal wasn't a moment of weakness or a genuine emotional connection with another woman. It was a calculated business decision orchestrated by his mother to position the family for maximum financial and social advantage. Patricia convinced me that you were probably having an affair too. Derek continued, that someone from your background wouldn't be faithful to someone from our social class. She hired investigators to follow you trying to find evidence of infidelity or financial impropriety that we could use in divorce proceedings. The irony was almost laughable. While Patricia was paying private investigators to try to find evidence of wrongdoing on my part, I was gathering evidence of their extensive criminal enterprises. Derek's family had been so focused on finding ways to destroy me that they had completely overlooked the possibility that I might be documenting their own illegal activities. "There's something else you need to know," Derek said, his voice dropping even lower. "Patricia is planning to claim that you somehow forced or manipulated her into the illegal activities. Her attorney is going to argue that you used your financial knowledge to trick her into criminal behavior, that everything was your idea from the beginning." I stared at Derek in disbelief. Even facing federal prison time, Patricia was still trying to find ways to destroy me and avoid taking responsibility for her own choices. The audacity of blaming me for crimes that had been occurring since before I met their family was stunning even by Patricia's standards of manipulation and cruelty. "Derek," I said calmly, "your mother is going to federal prison regardless of what lies she tells her attorney. I have documentation of illegal activities dating back 15 years long, before I ever met your family. The FBI has bank records, recorded conversations, and testimony from dozens of victims who were defrauded by Wellington Properties." Derek nodded miserably, finally understanding that his mother's reputation for always finding a way out of difficult situations wouldn't save her from federal prosecutors who had spent years building their case. "I know," he whispered. "I just thought you should be prepared for what she's going to try to do to you during the trial." As we sat in that small cafe with Derek's life crumbling around him and my own future finally looking bright, I felt an unexpected moment of sadness for the man I had once loved. Derek wasn't inherently evil like his mother. He was weak, easily manipulated, and had never learned to think for himself or consider the consequences of his actions. But that didn't excuse the years of emotional abuse he had put me through or the criminal activities he had chosen to participate in. "Derek," I said as I prepared to leave, "I hope you use this experience to become a better person. You're going to face serious legal consequences for your choices, but you're still young enough to rebuild your life if you're willing to take responsibility and make different decisions." That evening, I received a call from Agent Rodriguez informing me that Patricia had been arrested at her home and was being held without bail due to flight risk concerns and the severity of the charges against her. Derek had also been taken into custody on federal fraud charges, though he was being held at a minimum security facility pending his cooperation with the ongoing investigation. As I watched the news coverage of their arrests from my hotel room, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction, relief, and determination to use this experience to help other women who might be trapped in similar situations of financial and emotional abuse. The weeks following Patricia and Derek's arrests brought a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and personal revelations that would reshape my understanding of the Wellington family's true financial situation. I had assembled a formidable legal team led by Margaret Santos, one of the city's most respected divorce attorneys, who specialized in complex cases involving fraud and hidden assets. Margaret was a sharp, determined woman in her 50s who had built her reputation by representing clients in high-profile divorces where one spouse had attempted to hide significant wealth or assets. She reviewed my evidence with the focused intensity of a surgeon, immediately recognizing the strength of my position and the weakness of Derek's potential defense strategies. "Mara, this is one of the most comprehensive documentation efforts I've ever seen from a client," Margaret told me during our initial consultation. "You've essentially done the investigators' work for them. With this evidence, we can not only secure a complete dissolution of your marriage with no spousal support obligations, but we can also pursue civil damages for the emotional distress and financial harm Derek caused through his deception." The civil lawsuit we filed against Derek and Patricia sought damages for attempted fraud, emotional distress, and the costs associated with uncovering their criminal activities. We also requested immediate asset protection orders to ensure that any remaining Wellington family wealth couldn't be hidden or transferred beyond the reach of federal investigators and civil courts. Derek's legal situation deteriorated rapidly as federal prosecutors offered him a plea bargain in exchange for complete cooperation with their investigation into Patricia's money laundering operation. His attorney, an overwhelmed public defender who had never handled white-collar crime cases, advised Derek to accept any deal that might reduce his potential prison sentence. During his cooperation interviews, Derek revealed information that shocked even the experienced federal prosecutors who had been investigating financial crimes for decades. Patricia's criminal enterprise was far more extensive than anyone had realized, involving fake charity organizations, fraudulent government contracts, and connections to organized crime figures who used Wellington properties to launder money from illegal activities. Derek admitted that he had been pressured into approving fraudulent insurance claims since shortly after our wedding, with Patricia threatening to disinherit him and ruin his career if he refused to cooperate. He also revealed that Amanda Sullivan had unknowingly helped launder money by purchasing properties with funds Derek provided, then selling them quickly to generate clean cash that Patricia could use for legitimate business expenses. The revelation about Amanda's inadvertent involvement in money laundering led to additional charges against Derek for involving an unwitting third party in federal crimes. Amanda herself was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation, but her real estate career was effectively ended by the scandal and negative publicity. Meanwhile, Patricia's behavior in federal detention was creating additional legal problems for her defense team. She had been placed in solitary confinement after several incidents with other inmates, including attempts to bribe guards and efforts to contact family members in violation of court orders. Her attorney filed multiple motions claiming that solitary confinement was affecting her mental health and ability to participate in her own defense. The media coverage of the Wellington family scandal had attracted national attention, with major news networks sending reporters to cover what they described as a case study in white-collar crime and family dysfunction. Patricia's perp walk, where she was escorted from the federal courthouse in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, became a viral video that generated millions of views and countless memes mocking her fall from social prominence. Derek's college fraternity brothers, who had once envied his wealthy lifestyle and beautiful wife, now avoided any association with his name or reputation. The viral video of him recording my humiliation at the birthday dinner had been shared millions of times across social media platforms, making him a symbol of entitled behavior and spousal abuse that destroyed his chances of rebuilding his reputation in any professional field. 5 weeks after his arrest, Derek's attorney requested a private meeting with my legal team to discuss potential settlement terms that might reduce the civil damages he would face. The meeting took place in Margaret's downtown law office in a conference room overlooking the city where Derek had once imagined himself building a successful career and social reputation. Derek arrived wearing an ill-fitting suit provided by his attorney, looking nothing like the confident man who had recorded my birthday humiliation just weeks earlier. His face was pale and drawn. His hands shook slightly throughout our conversation, and he seemed to have developed a nervous tic that caused his left eye to twitch periodically. "Mara." Derek began, his voice barely audible. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness and I'm not asking for it, but I want you to understand that everything I did was wrong, and I take full responsibility for destroying our marriage and hurting you so deeply." Margaret had advised me to let Derek speak without interruption, recognizing that his admissions could be useful in both criminal and civil proceedings. Derek confessed to years of emotional manipulation, financial deception, and deliberate efforts to undermine my self-confidence and independence. "My mother convinced me that controlling you was necessary for family stability," Derek admitted, "but I realize now that I was just too weak to stand up to her manipulation. I let her turn me into someone I never wanted to be, and I hurt the only person who ever truly loved me for who I was." The most shocking revelation came when Derek's attorney presented financial documents showing the true state of the Wellington family's wealth. Contrary to their public image of prosperity and success, the family was actually millions of dollars in debt, having spent years living beyond their means while using illegal activities to maintain their lifestyle. Wellington Properties owed over $4 million to legitimate creditors, including banks, construction companies, and investors who had provided funding for projects that were never completed. The family's mansion was mortgaged beyond its current market value, their luxury cars were leased with payments funded by fraudulent insurance claims, and their country club memberships had been maintained through money laundering profits. "Mara, the inheritance your father left you makes you wealthier than my entire family ever was," Derek said, his voice filled with bitter irony. "My mother spent years trying to access your money because ours was already gone. We were living on borrowed time and stolen funds, pretending to be something we weren't." This revelation completely reframed my understanding of the Wellington family's motivations and behavior. Patricia's cruelty toward me hadn't just been about social class or family status. It had been driven by financial desperation and envy of wealth she couldn't legally access. Derek's affair with Amanda had been encouraged not just for social connections, but because Amanda's family represented the kind of legitimate wealth that could save the Wellington family from bankruptcy and criminal exposure. Margaret immediately recognized the implications of this information for our civil lawsuit. "Derek, are you saying that your family specifically targeted Mara because you believed she had inherited significant wealth that could solve your financial problems?" she asked. Derek nodded miserably. "My mother hired investigators to research Mara's background before I even started dating her seriously. When they discovered her father's successful investments and her inheritance, Patricia pushed me to accelerate our relationship and marry her as quickly as possible. The revelation that I had been deliberately targeted and manipulated from the very beginning of our relationship was emotionally devastating, but it also provided the final piece of evidence needed to secure maximum damages in our civil lawsuit. Derek had essentially admitted to marriage fraud conspiracy to commit theft and years of calculated emotional abuse designed to gain access to my inheritance. As the meeting concluded, Derek made one final request that surprised everyone in the room. "Mara, I know I have no right to ask for anything from you, but when I get out of prison, I want to spend my life trying to make amends for the harm I've caused. Would you be willing to write a character reference letter for my sentencing hearing if I agree to enter counseling and make full restitution to everyone my family defrauded?" I looked at this broken man who had once been my husband and felt a complex mixture of emotions. Despite everything he had done to me, I could see genuine remorse and a desire to change that hadn't existed when he was still under Patricia's influence. "Derek," I said quietly, "I'll consider writing that letter if you prove through your actions that you're truly committed to becoming a better person." That evening, I realized that my revenge against the Wellington family was complete, not through their punishment, but through the exposure of their true nature and the collapse of their elaborate deception. They had lost everything they claimed to value, while I had discovered strength and resources I never knew I possessed. 6 months after that devastating birthday dinner, I found myself in a position I could never have imagined. The federal bankruptcy court had scheduled an auction for Wellington Properties assets, including the family's mansion business properties and various holdings that had been seized as proceeds from criminal activity. As I sat in the courthouse reviewing auction documents, I realized I had the perfect opportunity to complete my transformation from victim to victor. The Wellington family mansion, where I had endured countless humiliating dinners and social gatherings, was being sold to satisfy creditors and pay restitution to fraud victims. The minimum bid was set at $1.8 million, well within my financial capabilities, thanks to my father's wise investments and my own careful financial planning over the years. I had been working with financial advisor Robert Chen, no relation to my late father, despite sharing the same surname, who specialized in helping clients make strategic investments in distressed properties. Robert was a methodical, ethical man who understood my desire to purchase the Wellington mansion not for revenge, but for the opportunity to transform a symbol of cruelty into something positive and meaningful. "Mara, purchasing this property gives you several strategic advantages," Robert explained as we reviewed the auction details. "You'll be buying below market value due to the circumstances the property has excellent bones and can be renovated for multiple purposes, and most importantly, you'll have complete control over how the space is used going forward." My plan was ambitious but deeply personal. I wanted to convert the Wellington mansion into a residential facility for women escaping domestic abuse and financial manipulation, providing them with temporary housing, financial counseling, and legal support to rebuild their lives. The mansion's 12 bedrooms and extensive common areas would be perfect for housing multiple families while they worked toward independence. The auction took place on a cold Tuesday morning in late autumn, with a small crowd of investors and curious onlookers gathered in the courthouse steps. Derek was present, required to attend as part of his plea agreement, looking uncomfortable in a cheap suit that highlighted how dramatically his circumstances had changed. Patricia remained in federal detention awaiting trial, so she couldn't witness the final destruction of her family's legacy. When the auctioneer called for opening bids on the Wellington mansion, I waited until several other potential buyers had made their offers. The bidding reached $1.7 million before I raised my paddle and calmly stated $2.2 million. The aggressive bid immediately eliminated most other bidders, and within minutes, I had legally purchased the home where I had once been treated as an unwelcome guest. Derek's face went completely pale as he realized what had happened. The woman he had humiliated and discarded now owned his childhood home, the symbol of everything his family claimed to represent. As the auctioneer's gavel fell finalizing the sale, Derek approached me with tears in his eyes. "Mara, what are you planning to do with the house?" he asked, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and dread. "I'm going to turn it into something your family never allowed it to be," I replied. "A place where people are treated with dignity and respect, where women can find safety and support instead of manipulation and abuse. Your childhood bedroom is going to become a counseling office where domestic abuse survivors learn to rebuild their confidence and independence." The transformation of the mansion began immediately. I hired Elena Rodriguez, an architect who specialized in converting large residential properties into community facilities. Elena had grown up in foster care herself and understood the importance of creating spaces that felt welcoming rather than institutional. Together, we developed plans to maintain the mansion's elegant character while making it functional for its new purpose. The renovation took 4 months and cost an additional $300,000, but the result was spectacular. The mansion's grand entryway became a welcoming lobby where residents could meet with counselors and legal advocates. The formal dining room where Patricia had held her cruel social gatherings was converted into a computer lab where women could develop job skills and search for employment opportunities. Derek's former bedroom, with its expensive furniture and Princeton University memorabilia, became my personal office where I met with residents to provide financial counseling and planning services. I found deep satisfaction in using this space where Derek had once plotted my destruction to help other women achieve economic independence and security. Meanwhile, my professional life was flourishing in ways I had never anticipated. The Thomas Chen Foundation, named in honor of my father's memory, had grown to employ 15 full-time staff members who specialized in helping women identify and escape financial abuse. We offered services ranging from basic financial literacy to complex asset protection strategies for women whose partners were attempting to hide or steal their money. Federal investigators had been so impressed with the evidence I gathered against the Wellington family that they hired me as an expert consultant on white-collar domestic crimes. I worked with law enforcement agencies across the country to help them identify patterns of financial abuse and develop strategies for investigating complex fraud cases involving family relationships. My personal life had also taken an unexpected turn when I met Dr. Michael Rodriguez, Elena's older brother, during one of our planning meetings for the mansion renovation. Michael was a pediatrician at the city's children's hospital who volunteered his time providing medical services to domestic abuse survivors and their children. He was gentle, intelligent, and completely supportive of my mission to help other women rebuild their lives. Unlike Derek, who had been threatened by my education and financial independence, Michael was genuinely impressed by my strength and accomplishments. He understood that I needed a partner who would encourage my growth rather than trying to control or diminish me. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than manipulation or financial calculation. 1 year after purchasing the Wellington Mansion, I organized a grand opening celebration for the Thomas Chen Foundation Women's Center. The event attracted over 200 guests, including federal agents who had worked on the Wellington case, other domestic abuse advocates, and 12 women who had already graduated from our program and successfully rebuilt their independent lives. As I stood in the mansion's grand foyer, addressing the crowd gathered to celebrate this transformation, I felt a profound sense of healing and purpose. The space that had once represented everything wrong with wealth and privilege had become a symbol of hope and recovery for women who needed support most. During my speech, I noticed Derek standing at the back of the crowd. He had been released from federal prison 3 months earlier after serving 18 months and was now working at a nonprofit organization that provided counseling services to men who had committed domestic violence. His presence at the celebration was part of his ongoing efforts to make amends for his past behavior. The greatest victory over cruelty isn't revenge. I told the gathered crowd, my eyes briefly meeting Derek's across the room. It's transformation. Taking something that was used to hurt people and turning it into a source of healing and hope for others. After the formal program ended, Derek approached me nervously. He looked healthier than he had during the legal proceedings, and there was a sincerity in his eyes that I had never seen during our marriage. "Mara, I want you to know that watching you create something beautiful from our family's ugliness has taught me more about redemption than anything else I've experienced. Derek had spent his time in prison earning addiction counseling certification and completing anger management training. He was now working with men who had committed domestic violence, helping them understand the impact of their behavior and develop healthier relationship patterns. His transformation appeared genuine, though I remained cautiously optimistic about his long-term commitment to change. Derek, I'm glad you're using your experience to help other people avoid the mistakes you made, I replied. But the most important thing you can do now is continue working on yourself and proving through your actions that you've truly learned from this experience. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I felt a deep sense of completion and new beginning. The woman who had been humiliated at that birthday dinner 18 months ago had not only survived her ordeal, but had transformed it into something that would help countless other women find their own strength and independence. 2 years after that humiliating birthday dinner that changed everything, I stood in a federal courthouse, listening to Patricia Wellington receive her final sentence for money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy charges. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, along with complete financial restitution to victims totaling over $4 million. Patricia's transformation from arrogant socialite to convicted felon was complete, and she would spend her remaining years in prison, while the community she had once manipulated rebuilt itself around principles of honesty and integrity. Patricia's sentencing hearing provided a moment of unexpected grace that I hadn't anticipated. During her final statement to the court, Patricia looked directly at me and offered a genuine apology for the years of cruelty and manipulation she had inflicted on our family. Her voice cracked with emotion as she admitted that her treatment of me had been driven by jealousy and financial desperation rather than any legitimate concerns about my character or background. Your Honor, I targeted Mara because I was envious of her education, her integrity, and her genuine relationship with my son, Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. I destroyed my family through greed and prejudice, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand how I became such a cruel person. Judge Margaret Thompson, who had presided over the entire case, commended my courage in exposing the widespread financial crimes that had victimized dozens of families over the years. Mrs. Wellington, the judge said, your willingness to gather evidence and cooperate with federal investigators prevented these crimes from continuing and helped ensure that victims received the justice they deserved. Derek's sentencing had taken place 3 months earlier, resulting in 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. During his hearing, I had kept my promise to write a character reference letter describing his cooperation with investigators and genuine efforts to accept responsibility for his actions. The letter emphasized that while Derek's crimes were serious and had caused significant harm, his willingness to testify against his mother and make full restitution suggested the possibility of rehabilitation. Derek's transformation during his incarceration had been remarkable to witness. He used his time in minimum security prison to earn addiction counseling certification and complete extensive therapy to address the toxic family dynamics that had shaped his behavior. Upon his release, he dedicated himself to working with men who had committed domestic violence, helping them understand the impact of their actions on their families and communities. The work Derek was doing with domestic violence counseling brought him into occasional contact with the Thomas Chen Foundation, though we maintained professional boundaries and limited personal interaction. He had written me several letters during his imprisonment, accepting complete responsibility for his actions and expressing gratitude for my decision to transform our shared trauma into something positive for other women. Amanda Sullivan had also managed to rebuild her life after the scandal destroyed her real estate career. She had used the experience as motivation to earn a law degree specializing in victims' rights advocacy and was now working with a firm that represented women in domestic abuse cases. Amanda had also written me a letter apologizing for her role in Derek's deception and expressing admiration for my strength in exposing the truth. The Thomas Chen Foundation had grown beyond my wildest expectations, now operating residential facilities in 3 cities and providing services to over 200 women annually. Our program had achieved remarkable success rates, with 85% of graduates establishing financial independence within 2 years of completing our services. The foundation had also inspired similar organizations across the country, creating a network of support for women escaping financial and emotional abuse. My personal life had found a happiness and stability I had never experienced during my marriage to Derek. Michael Rodriguez and I had married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and foundation staff members who had become my chosen family. Michael's support for my work and respect for my independence created the kind of partnership I had always dreamed of but never thought possible. 6 months after our wedding, Michael and I welcomed our daughter, Grace Patricia Rodriguez. We chose her middle name to honor the complex journey that had brought us together, acknowledging that even painful experiences can lead to growth and healing when approached with the right perspective. Grace was a healthy, beautiful baby who would grow up understanding that her mother had transformed tragedy into triumph through courage and determination. The ripple effects of my decision to expose the Wellington family's crimes continued to spread throughout our community. Several other women had come forward with similar stories of financial manipulation and abuse, leading to additional investigations and prosecutions that dismantled other criminal enterprises. Local universities had invited me to teach financial literacy courses specifically designed for young women, helping them recognize and avoid predatory relationships. 3 women contacted me every year on my birthday to thank me for giving them the courage to leave abusive marriages and rebuild their lives. These conversations reminded me that the public humiliation I had endured at that restaurant had ultimately served a greater purpose than I could have imagined at the time. The documentary film about my experience, titled The Gift of Divorce Papers, had been nominated for an Emmy Award and was being used by law enforcement agencies to train investigators about financial domestic abuse. The film's success had led to legislative changes in several states, making it easier for victims to report financial crimes committed by family members and providing better protection for witnesses who cooperated with investigations. As I reflected on the journey from that devastating birthday dinner to my current life of purpose and fulfillment, I realized that the greatest revenge hadn't been destroying the people who hurt me, but rather building something beautiful from the pain they caused. The strength I discovered within myself during those dark months had become the foundation for a life dedicated to helping others find their own power and independence. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was profound, but simple true strength comes from choosing growth over bitterness, healing over revenge, and service to others over self-pity. When people try to diminish us, they're usually revealing their own insecurities and failures rather than any actual weakness on our part. The most powerful response to cruelty is creating something meaningful from the ashes of destruction. My birthday will forever remind me that sometimes the worst gifts become doorways to the best chapters of our lives. What felt like complete devastation at the time actually freed me from a toxic relationship and revealed capabilities I never knew I possessed. The divorce papers that were meant to humiliate me became the legal documents that allowed me to reclaim my life and dedicate it to helping others do the same. Real victory isn't about watching our enemies suffer, but about becoming so genuinely happy and fulfilled that their opinions and actions no longer have any power over our emotional well-being. The woman who signed those divorce papers at that restaurant table was broken and defeated. The woman writing these words today is strong, purposeful, and surrounded by people who love and respect her for exactly who she is. I want to leave you with this question. Have you ever experienced a moment that felt like complete failure or humiliation, but later realized it was actually the beginning of your best life? How did you find the strength to transform pain into purpose? Please share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if my journey inspired you in any way. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story and for being part of a community that believes in the power of transformation and healing. I hope that sharing my experience encourages you to see your own challenges as opportunities for growth and reminds you that you have more strength than you realize. Please subscribe to hear more stories of courage and recovery, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from knowing that their current struggles don't define their future possibilities. Remember, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the decision to never let someone else's cruelty determine your worth or limit your dreams. You are capable of more than you know, and every ending can become a beautiful beginning when approached with courage and hope.